I have 4 additional slimline blanks that need a little help, and it's really nothing major. This one you can see split out, and I searched and searched and searched. I never could find the little piece that chipped out. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off with my bandsaw just shy of the split. I'll retrim it with the barrel trimmer. It'll be a little too short, but what I'll do when I put the pin together is I'll add a second chrome ring. I've done this in the past whenever my blanks are too short. I just make sure this is the cap. I slide a second chrome ring on there. It looks really sharp. I'll show you that when it's finished. This one is making me a little nervous. See how it's split? But I think I've got probably 1/8 of an inch before I ever hit the tube, and it's only split right back to this first little glob of denim. So I'm going to cut that one off also. So I think these look really sharp. They're going to be on chrome kits, and you'll have the denim and the blank, and then there'll be 2 rings, which I think will really give them a classy look. So that's how I'm going to fix those. This one here, and you can see how, just like the other night, I've got the barrel extended too far. I kept trying to trim down to correct it, and it just kept chipping out. I don't exactly know why. I guess maybe my carbide cutter was a bit too aggressive, but I'm going to take this one over to the sander, and I've got a jig over there, and I'm just going to sand this one flat. The back end's perfect. And same for this one. It's just got a little tiny chip right there, but I didn't want that to be at the end of a pin and to show. So I'm just going to take it to the sander and sand that down. These won't require any additional chrome rings. They should be just fine. They'll just be a hair short. But let's go ahead and head over to the bandsaw first and get these cut, and then we'll hit the sander and square everything up. Here's my first blank, and I need to come back to about here. So let me transfer that onto a flat side so I can see it. I'll take a pretty good chunk off, but as you can see, about 1/8 of an inch of that is already been barrel trimmed back, so it's not going to take as much off as we might think, but let's see how straight of a line we can cut. If we take a look at this, you can see the brass tube in there. Let me see if I can break it out. There we go. There's the brass tube, and there is a chrome ring. So this is about the perfect distance to make this work. So I think it's going to look really sharp. If you haven't seen a double chrome ring or double chrome trim ring on a pin, they really look nice. So that one's ready to go and just be barrel trimmed, or I think what we'll do is we'll sand these on my sanding jig. Let me grab the next one. Here's my second denim blank, and once again, I want to do about the same thing. Boy, this is a little tough to see, but that looks like about the line, and actually, there's a pretty good divot there. I tell you what, we're going to go back just a little bit more. I'm going to come right behind this knot. I have about 1/8 of an inch there, and that'll take we'll just look at it when we get it cut and see how much of the tube we end up taking off, but it's going to be a tricky one. Wasn't a very good glue up. I need to be a little more careful. The saw has stopped. Let's see if we can split this thing apart. It's glued pretty good. It might have held. Yeah, I can't really get it apart, but as you look in there, you can see the chrome ring. It's about the same size as the other, so I think we're going to be okay. And when you look at the end of the blank, I am way past the crack that was in the blank, so we've got plenty of meat there. I think this one's going to be fine too. We'll go ahead and make it a double trim ring. This is a little jig that Robert Montgomery made for me a while back. He took measurements from my belt sander and made it to fit exactly this tool. It's great. It's got a 1/4 inch bar, which is perfect for 7mm tubes. And the way it works is, let me get this one off here. We're going to fire up the belt sander, which is going to make a lot of noise here in a second. And I just bring this forward, and I can just rotate it up at the front of the bar on the paper, and it will sand a perfectly perpendicular surface to the tube. So let's give it a go. And you can see that I've got a great flat surface, and it's perfectly flat, so this blank is ready for the lathe. Let me get the other. I'm going to run all 3 of the other blanks across here and square them up as well. This is one of the blanks that I worked on earlier. I actually worked on the back half, and I squared it up on my sanding jig because I was having a little trouble with it chewing out on the barrel trimmer. I was working on the front piece of the blank, and it got pretty thin down here, and this little piece of paduke just gave way. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my parting tool and I'm going to square this up, just part it off, square it up, and I'm going to glue another piece of paduke on there. Alright, up to the loft to grab a piece of paduke and we're good to go. I happen to have this piece of paduke up on my loft. It's left over from an intarsia project, and I'm just going to basically come down here to the end and put a 7mm hole, which is the size of the tube that I have. All I want to do now is get this trimmed up in kind of somewhat of a circular fashion so that I can glue it to my blank. It's not perfect, but it should do the trick. I've taken my blank off the lathe, and I went ahead and rubbed the face of this piece of paduke on some sandpaper, 120 grit, just to kind of rough it up a little bit. I'm going to use a little medium CA. Just going to apply some right to the wood, making sure I get good coverage, especially around the middle. I'll go ahead and put it on there, and let me shoot it with some accelerator. Since my piece of paduke was a little larger than what I needed, I'm going to run back over to my belt sander and sand that down just a little bit. Keep your fingers crossed. Looks great. You would never know it wasn't meant to be there. I'm going to get the back blank turned, and then we'll sand everything up, and hopefully it holds together back here and we'll have a beautiful looking pin. Unfortunately, the paduke did not hold up on the back half of the pin either. I lost it right down at the bushing. I'm going to basically repeat the same process I did on the front half of the blank. I won't show it again, and I'll come back and show you this blank when she's turned. Ultimately, what I think I'll do, since this pin doesn't have any grain that needs to be followed, is instead of putting it together like this, I'll put the paduke on either end because it's a solid ring, and I think it'll look really, really nice. I'm ready to start working on these blanks, getting them fixed up, and I want to find a couple darker pieces of wood for this one. That's the back blank. And I thought about going lighter on this one, but I think I'm also going to look for some darker wood for the front blank. I keep a few cutoffs in the shop, so what I want to do now is take a couple of minutes and just browse through these boxes and see if I can't find something that'll work. I'm sure that I can probably scrape together something from all of this. I found a couple of blanks. I thought this one, it's one of those 4 wood blanks, might look kind of cool on the front half of the pin. And then this is some figured walnut that's really pretty. I thought that might look really nice on the back half of the pin. So what I'm going to do is get a couple pieces cut. I'll get them drilled, and then we'll sand them up so that they're flat and get them glued to these blanks. Split the figured walnut blank in half. I won't need this piece. I'm going to run over to the drill press now and just drill a hole right up the middle of each of these. With holes drilled in the blanks, I'm going to run over to my belt sander and use my sanding jig, and I'm going to sand both sides of these perfectly flat. With my blanks sanded flat on both ends, I'm going to split them in half, and I drew a little line on the flat side of both blanks, so that way I'll know which end gets glued onto the tube. With a little medium CA glue and some activator, let's glue these pieces to our blanks. I want to make very sure that I keep the line, which is the flat edge, toward the blank. I'm going to head back over to my sander where I'll sand these down to the tubes and knock the corners off, and then we'll be ready to turn. Here are my repaired blanks ready to go to the lathe. I just ended up knocking the hard corners off on the bandsaw because my sandpaper is getting really dull on my belt sander. But as you can see, I've got everything nice and squared up with the tubes. So I'll come back in a few minutes, I'll get this turned, and I'll show you what the blanks look like. The front blank turned out amazing. It looks incredible. Can't wait to get it sanded up. The back blank, on the other hand, was turning great. I'm ready for the final pass, and I saw some brass. I lost a little piece of it right there, so what I'm going to end up doing, taking the parting tool, I'm going to part this off, go make me another piece of figured walnut. Luckily I have some left. Glue another piece on there, and we'll start again. It took a little work, but I got the blank turned. I think it looks absolutely amazing. It needs to be cleaned up a little bit, and you can see I've got the multicolor wood on the end, or the multi-wood blank on the end, which I think is kind of a cool twist with that cut at a 45-degree angle. And here's the back blank. I think it looks really good. All I need to do now, they've been sanded to 400, is put some CA on them and press them into a kit, and we're good to go.